Please welcome Patricia Velasquez, Adebayo Alonge, Matt Damon, and Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Thank you. Well, I could not be more excited than I am to moderate this panel with three doers, three people who know what's working and want to make it possible for us to have even more success in helping people. I'm going to start with Matt Damon, because Matt has been coming to CGI since 2008, I think, and it was here at CGI when he joined us for the first time that he met Gary White, and the idea for water.org was formed. Since then, Matt and Gary have grown water.org into a massive and well-respected NGO. And in 2022, Matt came back to CGI at our relaunch and made a commitment to action to really scale the work. So, Matt, I'd love to get a progress report. How did you turn an idea that you had with Gary in 2008 into this extraordinary success story of getting clean water to people?
Thanks. Yeah, we did meet here, and we did decide to do this together here, and so this is a really special place for us, obviously. But it really, I was looking for the preeminent expert in this space to partner with. I'd been hunting Gary for a while and knew he was going to be here, so I tracked him down. And Gary at the time, he did the best direct impact work, kind of the traditional charity model of well drilling. And Gary's, most of these water projects, half of them fail within the first 5 years, as you know. And Gary's didn't because of the way he worked within the communities and got community buy-in. And so I had my eye on him. But Gary also had this incredible idea, which he was just starting to work on. He was slowly gaining traction, which was to take the ideas pioneered by Muhammad Yunus and repurpose them for the water space. And in retrospect, it seems very obvious, but at the time, that was a big thought leap for the microfinance institutions, because rather than being an income-generating loan, a loan for water was actually an income-enhancing loan. We were basically buying the time back for people, these primarily women who are tasked with the water collection, women and girls, for their families if they don't have access. And so by basically kind of taking this idea and trying to scale it, to give some context, we reached our first 1 million people in 2012, and we had an event, and your husband, President Clinton, was there. He's been a big champion of our work. And he looked at our model, which was basically about trusting the most vulnerable people on the planet, primarily women, to pay back these loans. If you just nudge the markets toward them, they can do the rest. And he knew it was going to work. He got it very quickly. And I'll never forget, he pulled me aside and he said, you just run those numbers up. You run them up. and he was right, because he said, you just become undeniable. And that's what we've been doing. And so for some context, it took Gary 20-something years to hit that first 1 million people, and we're now at 68 million people that we've reached. But the real beauty of that story is that it's these women. 90% of our borrowers are women, one after another repaying these loans. This is over 13 million loans that have reached this 68 million people. They pay back at over 98%. And it's because of that the money gets recycled and it goes back out, and it drives down the philanthropic cost of capital per person reached every time it recycles. And so it just goes down and down and down. And so it's not only, it makes us able to do things at scale, it makes it much more efficient.
That's such a great story, but it also is filled with all kinds of lessons about how to empower people and provide resources. And Patricia, you've been doing that. It's great to have you back at CGI, and I so admire the work of the Wayutea Foundation that you started. Tell us a little bit about that foundation and how have you used partnerships, which is at the core of the whole idea of CGI, to reach indigenous people?
Oh, thank you so much, Hillary. Such an honor to be here again and, of course, sharing the stage. And we are so grateful for the support that we have received throughout all these years. So I am a Wayu indigenous person, and the Wayu is a community that sits right on the border between Venezuela and Colombia, and it's about 500,000 people. When we started the foundation over 20 years ago, one child was dying a day of malnutrition. So to serve the community, we installed a water pump in a village donated by Katie Ford, who's the founder of Freedom for All, who's here with us, and then 2,800 people had water. We then opened a little preschool for 30 children because this will guarantee that the kids will have 2 meals a day. Well, that grew. We are now taking care of over 68,000 children. But we understood very early on, Hillary, that we couldn't do this alone, that partnerships was key and that we would have to have these partnerships with like-minded organizations. And it all started here. Jose Andres introduced us to you, and through CGI, we have been able to meet most of our partners. Direct Relief, sending humanitarian aid, medicine and supplies to hundreds of thousands of people. Acceso, sending food every week for thousands of children. Core Response, they help us with our operations. And Center for Disaster and Philanthropy, we have been able to build a well, acquire a water truck, and also install hand washing stations. So we are working really hard in sending humanitarian aid, but we also understand that we have to create regenerative programs that can help us achieve our sustainability, like our water program. And we have to talk, Matt. It's very simple. Everybody has to buy water there because we don't have any. So we have 3 trucks that were donated. And from every water truck load that we sell to those who can afford it, we give 1 free water truck to the community. And more than 90,000 people have received free water. So talking about partnerships, when Direct Relief came to us with the first donation of medicine and supplies, we thought it was massive. And when the proposition for the second donation came, I almost didn't take it because I didn't know how I was going to do the distribution. And Ann Lee, founder of Core Response, who's also here, she said to us, you take it, and we will help you figure out the distribution. Well, nowadays, we have received 120 times the amount of their first donation. So that's the power of partnership.
Well, Adebayo, this is your first CGI, so welcome.
Yeah,
and you are part of the 2024 CGI Greenhouse cohort this year, which supports social entrepreneurs around the world, connects them with social capital and the resources of this amazing CGI community. Now, you have a story, and I want you to tell your story because you didn't just wake up one day, decide to create RxAll. You actually woke up from a coma after 20 days because of what you experienced. So I want you to tell our audience, both in the room and those who are watching the live stream, how you ended up creating this really important technology now in use in Nigeria, Uganda, Kenya, with many more countries to come.
Thank you so much, Secretary Clinton, and I really appreciate the warm welcome to yourself, Dr. Chelsea, and President Clinton, and the rest of the CGI team. I'm really happy to be here to share about my story, about the work that I'm doing. I believe it's not just a representation of my work, but also a way to use the stage to talk about the work that impact entrepreneurs like myself are doing in very difficult areas like in Africa and other developing parts of the world to change chronic issues on the ground. My story started 20 years ago when I was growing up as a teenager in Nigeria. I lived in a low-income community where our local pharmacy was at the heart of our social lives. It wasn't just a place where we got our medications. It was a place where we also purchased groceries like water, It was a place where we hanged out socially, and where we even took quick credit to buy things that were too expensive for us to afford. One day, I fell sick, and as usual, my dad went to our neighborhood store to get me my medication. I used a dose that afternoon and another dose in the evening, and I did not wake up the next day. I had gone into a 21-day coma. I almost died, but luckily I pulled through. But that's not a story for 100,000 Africans who die every year from this issue. And as I got better, my dad told me about how he had confronted the local pharmacist. Why would you sell us? You know us. We're part of this community. Why would you sell us a fake drug? And the pharmacist said, I'm so sorry, profusely apologized to my dad. He said, there's no way I would have sold you guys a medication. You're the pastor of this community. Why would I sell you a fake medication? And I'm so sorry that this happened. When my daddy pressed him to tell us who supplied him the medication, this was the most amazing thing. He said he did not know, that he had so many suppliers, and he didn't keep the proper records of who was supplying him what. I was 15 years at the time, and that message was a deep impression on me, because I started to think of the millions of low-income families across Africa that relied on the pharmacy not just for medications, but for groceries, other daily needs. And if the pharmacists could not even assure the quality of what it was they were dispensing and selling, then who was safe across the continent? And so I made a decision that I was going to be a pharmacist, and I'm going to solve that problem. I qualified as a pharmacist, and then I took a policy and business degree from Yale and Harvard, where I told you I almost met you some years ago. And I started out RxAll, and primarily we are a data platform, and we use technology to help the pharmacists collect procurement and transaction data, aggregate it, and analyze it for insights. So we have three main components. The first is this device. It's a proprietary device. Shout out to Yale School of Management and the innovation ecosystem. They helped me take this idea that I had in the School of Pharmacy in Nigeria, but I didn't have the capital to make it. It was when I came to the School of Business here, I got the capital to eventually build this device. It's an AI spectrometer. It's proprietary to us, and it works with a mobile app on an Android phone, and you can do a quick test of the medication quality in 20 seconds to know if that medication is pure enough to consume.
Wow.
This is what this here does. And since we've been commercial with this product in the last 5 years, we've collected over 100 million data points on quality across 20,000 of the most used medication SKUs. And we've been able to aggregate and segment them. We have the high-quality medications and the suppliers of those medications and the low-quality medications. And that way, we point the pharmacies into the high-quality medications. On top of that, we built a POS register that records all of the transactions that the pharmacists sell to the patients. And that information is what is used to help with demand forecasting so that medications are always on the shelf. And just like you, Matt, we've built out a microfinance profile for all the pharmacies that use this. And we've helped to unlock financing, working capital financing, to 3,000 women-owned pharmacies that couldn't access capital from the traditional banking system before. That now happens through us. And the 5,000 pharmacies in our network get high-quality medications every single month to over 3 million patients each month. So that's our work. That's my story.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
Can you tell everybody, because you told me backstage and I couldn't believe it, how the percentage of fake medication?
Yes, 30% of medicines in circulation across pharmacies in Africa are fake.
Wow.
The government is doing a lot of work, but typically they're constrained with budgets. And the issue with pharmaceuticals is that it's a trade commodity now. Really, just like you can buy mobile phones, you can make it in China or India and ship across the world. It's the same way medications are being produced now. Anyone can go, make those productions, and get a license to sell in the local markets. So it's very difficult. Imagine you have a staff strength of 500 people. How do you police that? This is the big issue. You know, so official numbers typically with the government tends to be a bit lower. It goes in between 13 to 15%. Unofficial numbers that have been validated by third parties puts it about 30%. Wow. We're still in double digits either way, and it's a big issue.
Well, you know, I think, Ade, the point that you're making so strongly is the way that technology can now help us with these problems, but we have to make sure that, number one, it is of high quality,
yes,
and number two, people can afford it and understand it. And I want to go back to you, Matt, because when you were here in 2022, you said you wanted to leverage a $50 million investment from philanthropic capital to create a $1 billion investment portfolio to help 100 million more people across Africa, Asia, and Latin America get lasting access to clean water and sanitation, because it's really both, isn't it?
For sure.
So how's that going, and how's the partnership going?
Yeah, I realized I didn't answer that the first time, and you asked me. Yeah, no, so
it follows up on you know, the interchange you two just had about how to do this.
So, well, again, for context, it's interesting. I'm remembering now that the first commitment we made here was in 2009, I believe, and that was to reach 50,000 people in Haiti. And we actually we beat that. We did well with that one. We were interrupted by the earthquake, but the subsequent year we met and exceeded that number. But to give an idea, the next pledge we made was to reach 100 million people, which is to give you an idea of this scale. So we've reached 18 million people so far. We're 100 million into that. Well, I should say, so I'll try to do this quickly. There's another aspect to this. When Gary and I were in India about 10 years ago, we were kind of informally polling our MFI partners, kind of across. We were there for a couple weeks, and we were going all around, and we must have met with 6 or 7 different partners, and every single one reported the same bottleneck, which was access to consistent, affordable capital, and which was amazing. It was a wonderful realization that the demand was just outstripping the capital that was in place to meet it, but it got us thinking, well, how do we get more capital into this system? So we started thinking about social impact investing. We went to some very smart people, our friends at Bank of America. And we ended up creating something called water equity. And what water equity is it's an asset manager for water. And so what we do essentially is we view the money, donor dollars and investment dollars have normally classically been kind of separate, right? We view it as kind of part of a spectrum. So we take the donor dollars and we use that money to, it's a terrible pun, but to financially plumb, so that we can follow along with commercial capital, and that way we can reach more people. And so that's one of the things we face is, at the grassroots level, certainly a lot of people tend to want that dopamine hit of, well, I gave this much money, I want to see where the well is, where's the village, who am I affecting, and where we tend to look at it as it's hard to raise money for de-risking a loan portfolio, which is essentially what we're doing, but that's really the way to attack the problem. Finance really is the answer, and has been for us, and that's why we're able to announce 100 million people that we're going to reach, and we're on our way to doing it. So.
Look, I think that there's a lot of people here who are in the same position that you just described. How do you de-risk capital? How do you get concessionary capital? How do you get the assets that even poor people have to count as more capital, which is really the microfinance model, because it's not just their hard work, it's their trust and their community involvement. And Patricia, in the work that you're doing, trying to think about sustainable development in the context of supporting indigenous people, how are you thinking about that? How do you get resources into what is still a pretty isolated community that they can then use to empower themselves and build up their own resources and be able to make decisions for themselves?
Well, since the Wayuu is a matriarchal community, I think sustainability is already embedded in their worldview. But I think we have to put this in perspective. The New York government anticipates to spend a staggering $4.2 billion in the migration crisis this year. And we in Wayutaya, that's about $40,000 to $60,000 per migrant per year. And we in Wayutaya spend $1,750 per child per year. That is food, medicine, education, and tools. So while the real cost of migration is debated, it is clear that it's high. So I feel that if families want to stay in their homeland, I think we have to find a way to help them to do so.
No, I think that that's a very important insight. You know, sometimes it becomes very difficult. There's natural and man-made disasters. There's economic collapse, political oppression. We know all the reasons, but I think what you're doing is to show that it is possible, so that one community at least can live in a sustainable way without having to leave. And I think that's an important message. You know, Ade, your technology has now grown to over 500 pharmacies.
5,000.
5,000, excuse me, 5,000. I misread that. 5,000 serving what? You said 3 million patients?
3 million patients use the network.
So how have you figured out how to work with local partners, community leaders? I mean, you show up with your machine. I'm sure that sort of worries some of the pharmacists you walk into their store and you say, here, I'm here to help you. I mean, how do you find a way to really engage them so that they can see this is working, it can work for me, it's not a threat?
Yeah, so primarily we put our stakeholders in the front and center of our work. There are actually three main stakeholders for us. It's the government regulators, whose primary function is actually the supervision of the drug supply chain. It's the pharmacist, who is responsible for ensuring that the high-quality medications get to the patients. And of course, it's the patients who need to know where to go to get high-quality medications. So for us, it's very important that when we are rolling out our technologies, we're not coming as a paternalistic provider of technology, but rather as someone who listens to what it is that's the main issue that they're facing. If you look at the government regulators, they actually have quality assurance labs. But the primary issue with that is that you want to get a test sample from a port to somewhere in the middle of the country and do a test, and that medication has to sit for 3 months before you know whether it's good or not to let into the country. People won't do that, so they smuggle through the borders, right? So one has to see that what we do is sit down with the government, for example, understand what those major issues are, and then help to align our technology towards use. For the pharmacists, it's the same thing. They don't have the extra capital to pay for this. So the way we do it is to build it not as a subscription model as you typically do in this part of the world, but as a share of transaction. So by saying that if we're able to make this as an affiliate pharmacy network and we point patients to go and buy from you, give us a share of that revenue, rather than you having to pay for that upfront. So there's a no-risk trial for them to uptake the technology. And then for the patient side of things, it's mostly advocacy. So social media advertising, influencer marketing, letting them, first of all, know that not every medicine that looks to you like it's good is actually good. Not every pharmacy that looks to you that it's good is actually good. You need to know, and then find the ones that are affiliated and do extra work to get high-quality medications out there. So that's how we do it, taking the stakeholders along that journey. And then one more important thing with the patients, we give them a channel for feedback. This is something that the government typically used to use the hospital system to do, but not very effective. People are afraid of doctors. Low-income people tend to be afraid of doctors. But the pharmacists, very easy to chat, tell them how they're feeling, and we use that as a channel to get the feedback and provide that data to the government so they can do their work better.
Well, I'm going to ask one last question of everyone as our time wraps up. And I'm going to ask you, we're focusing on what works. If you could make a change in government, in local community, in access to capital, whatever it might be, if you could make one change that would really enhance what you're doing, Patricia, or some person that you think could make a difference in what you're doing. Could you tell us what could make your work even more effective going forward?
Well, I'll have to say, I have to tell you a little story in relationship to that. When we were in the pandemic, our area was one of the hardest hit. And we have, thanks through CDP, Core, and Global Giving, we have been able to purchase a significant amount of nutritional drinks. But we were under strict lockdown, and we couldn't distribute these drinks. And the situation became very dire, especially for children. And one of our team members, his name is Chelly, he took a risk, and he went out quietly every day because he couldn't bear seeing the children starving and us having these drinks in the office. So he quietly went out every day with a trolley, with a donkey, buy food, and he took these drinks and placed them in people's homes. So when things get very difficult, I always think of Chelly. And in answering your question, going back to partnerships, I feel that what we're doing at CDP and what we're doing with all the other partners and what we're doing here at CGI, we're on the right path. I wouldn't change anything. I would just bring more people over. We're not alone. And what we're doing here is working.
Oh, thank you so much, Patricia. So, Adebayo, what would you want to see change that would make what you're doing work even more?
Support to our entrepreneurs, especially as Africa comes of age. 60% of the population right now is under 25 years. 40 to 45% are under 15 years. So even though I'm on this panel and I'm the youngest person here, but I'm actually an uncle to 40 to 45% of people in Africa. I'm double their age. We need to give them the education so that they can produce technology like this. I don't have to leave, like you were saying, Patricia, I shouldn't have had to leave Nigeria to take something that I conceived in my mind and come to the US to make it, because I don't have the capital to do it. As you mentioned, let's keep our best and brightest back home, give them the education, give them the capital, give them the access to international markets to do their best work. That's what I need.
Well, I hope somebody out there hears him, because this looks like a good bet to me. And Matt, what about you? What do you see as something that could make a big difference in you and Gary and Water.org meeting this goal quickly and then going on to your next big goal?
Well, this idea really works. It works as well as President Clinton predicted it would over a decade ago. That's the exciting part. I think for me, to echo what Patricia said, for us it's about raising awareness, getting the word out. Had we stayed with the traditional charity model, we did the math, it would have taken us 600 years to get where we are right now. And so these new ways of approaching things, these new innovations, for us it's about spreading the word, and this is a great platform, this is a great place to do that, and you guys have always been great for us, so thank you as always. I'm an eternal optimist, and I believe that people believe in good ideas. And so I would encourage anybody to donate or invest. If you're looking if you're seeking a competitive return, as I said, we've proven these loans pay back at over 98%. They're very safe, and they're very dependable. And to me, the great story there is these women, one at a time, one after another, year after year, over 13 million times, paying these back. It's the most heroic, and so for us, it's about these public-private partnerships, these corporate partners around the world, high net worth individuals, everybody, learning about this story, celebrating this story, because I believe once you do it, it is, as your husband once said, undeniable.
Well, let's show our appreciation for each of them and what they're doing to show what's working. Thank you so much. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Adebayo. Thank you, Patricia.
Please welcome back Dr. Chelsea Clinton.